Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends on where you're joining us and which part of the world. It's a pleasure to have everybody join in. I think more will do so over the course of the next few minutes. You are joining the workshop by the Aspire Academy for practical tips for writing and evidencing an Aspire Award application. It's a real pleasure to be here. And in a moment, we're going to be introducing ourselves. To get started, those who are already here, if you could please put in the chat feature of the webinar, if you could put your name, the name and country of your institution, and the type of program that you belong to, whether it's medical, dental, or veterinary. That'll help us get started and also have an opportunity to get to know everybody that's joining us. And there's quite a few of us. There's over 40 already. We may be expecting almost double that. So please go ahead and keep putting in into the chat feature your name, the country where you're from, the name of your institution, and again, the type of program. While you go ahead and do that, I'm going to get started with a little bit of background about the Aspire Academy that is hosting this webinar. The Aspire Academy includes all the recipient schools of the Aspire to Excellence Awards to date. That's 47 different institutions you see represented in all these lovely logos over here. And it has a fantastic aim. The Academy aims to promote excellence in education. So once the awards have been given out, we don't stop there. It inspires further excellence through collaboration and dissemination of best practices in medical education. And it really provides an opportunity for members of the Academy to network and share their experience and knowledge to not only maintain excellence or raise the standards at their own institutions, but to share these best practices with the larger health professions education community and to create these kinds of communities of practice through which excellence can be disseminated and discussed. There's more information. It's available. You're always welcome to join. Go to the website that's shown below, and you may be able to access more information about the Aspire Academy in particular, but also about the Aspire to Excellence Awards, which you must know about if you're already here and joining this webinar. So as our participants continue to introduce themselves, this is probably information that is you already know this, but let me share what are the various areas of excellence that are recognized by this Aspire to Excellence Award. There's student assessment, student engagement, social accountability, faculty development, simulation, there's curriculum development. There's the fantastic inspirational approaches to health professions education, and the newer entries, technology enhanced learning, and the one category introduced just this year, the international collaboration in health professions education. The numbers that you see in parentheses indicate the number of institutions that hold these Aspire Awards again to date. And it's fantastic to see so many in the community who are looking to apply to become and achieve excellence and have evidence of this excellence by getting this award. So again, if you haven't done so, we ask that you go ahead and put your own name, the name and country of your institution and school in the chat, and also the type of program that you belong to. What are we going to be doing over the course of the next hour or so? We'll spend the first half of it talking about setting the frame and really elaborating on what we mean by practical tips for completing an Aspire to Excellence application. And we want to leave enough time at the end to be able to answer all your questions. So we'd like to run through our own presentation, but don't let that stop you. If a question comes to mind, go ahead, put it in the chat. I'll be moderating it, and by the end, we'll come around to hopefully answering all of the questions. So here, I want to take the opportunity to start introducing ourselves. My name is Kulsoom Ghias. I'm from the Aga Khan University in Pakistan, and I'm the current chair of the Aspire Academy. It's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves one by one, starting with Harm Peters.
Hello, everybody in the round. My name is Harm Peters. I'm from the Charité Hospital in Berlin, and I'm the past chair of the Aspire Academy.
Hello everyone, I'm Sue Smith. I'm from Imperial College in London. I'm a member of the Aspire Academy, and Imperial received an award for student engagement.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Owen. I'm Director of Medical Studies at Warwick Medical School in the UK. We just got our award last year, and we got it for student engagement as well.
So thank you all. Coming to now the aim of this webinar or workshop, what we hope to do is to provide practical tips on the structure and style when completing an Aspire Award application, when writing it. So the areas that we hope to cover are going to be these practical tips on structuring the content that is relevant for your school to better highlight the domains of excellence for whatever category of award you're applying for. We'll talk about the common types of evidence and how best to provide them. And we'll talk about handling the appendices and how to link them with the application text. So you see that these are really very practical tips that we want to deliver today to take away some of the headache of completing an application while you focus on the content. What we will not cover, and I think it's important to highlight that, is any hints on the specific content that will be considered as excellent for the award application. You all will have your own examples in your context for your schools. We won't be going into particular examples of that, but really just we're talking about writing an application and providing some helpful hints on how to do it to best highlight your content. And while we may use, Kate and also mentioned this, that her school won the Aspire Award for Excellence in Student Engagement, as has Sue's school, and as has Harm and the institution that I belong to. So we've taken it as an example, but that's not to limit it just to the award for Excellence in Student Engagement. The information that we hope you will take away from this can really be applied to any of the Aspire Awards. But if we look at generally the application form, you'll notice that it is, and I hope you've had a chance to already look at the application forms. It's divided up into several sections. The first one is just regular information and who the submitter is. The B section and C, really, it gets into the meat of it, responding to specific criteria in that area. The summary of the justifications for recognition of excellence. Section D becomes providing any additional information or supporting documentation, with E closing out with the student perspective, which is ever important. And finally, certification. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kate and ask her to start taking us through some practical tips.
Thank you very much, Kulsoom. So my bit is really about the kind of practicalities of pulling together and organising your submission, which is very fresh in my mind as we just did it last year. And I think my top tip really would be thinking about it in plenty of time. We applied in a very COVID disrupted year, which probably wasn't very sensible. But if we had started earlier, it would have made it easier for us. But I think I would say don't wait for a good time, because it may never come. And actually pulling together all the things that we had done actually was a real morale boost, because we realised that we had done way more stuff than we thought we had. So the investment in time was really worth it for us. So to start off with, I'd think about who needs to be involved in developing your application and start to pull a little team together. It would be way too much work for one person to do on their own, and getting the right people in the team at the beginning is really helpful. I'd really recommend involving students early. They just bring a different viewpoint, don't they? They think of things that we don't think of as educators sometimes. And I think whatever award you're applying for, I would really encourage you to use students as collaborators rather than people that you consult with once you've put your bid together. So I'd get them involved from early on in the planning phase. There's a lot of evidence to gather. and this is perhaps the biggest piece of the work, putting it all together. So having some admin support is really useful. Somebody to chase down university and school documents that you aren't sure where they kept because they were developed years ago, lost in the mist of time. So someone that can chase down stuff like that is really useful. And someone just to pull everything together in one place and keep it safe so that when you come to link your evidence to your submission, it's all in one place rather than you at that stage trying to chase everything down. Think about who your main stakeholders are, and again, include them right from the beginning. So ours were students, so that kind of goes without saying, but whatever it is, you're going to have stakeholders whose voice will need to come through in your application. So again, try and get them on board right from the beginning. Think about who is going to start to put it together with you, who's going to help do a draft, but who's going to write it? You want, when you write, to have a nice flow through. So think about, is it better if one person kind of does the final write all the way through, but actually could you have different people draft different sections in point form that makes it easier for the writing person to go through? I guess it's just thinking about who you've got and where their strengths lie. And thinking about who will review the final draft. We alerted some of the senior management team early to let them know that we were going to be asking them on this day to review the draft by 3 days time, so that they had diarised time. We knew that they would be able to review it in that time frame, and that was really helpful to us, but also leaving a bit of time left to make any changes following their feedback. And the next slide, that's great, thank you. And it is a large piece of work. There's no getting away from it. It does take quite a long time to do, but as I said before, really, really worth it. But I'd particularly factor in time to work on displaying your evidence and think about your web presence. I think an unexpected benefit for us was we found it really easy to display our evidence on our external web pages, which meant that we invested quite a bit of time in that. But then we also ended up with our web pages being way better than they were before we started in the beginning. So just being aware that displaying your evidence might take time too. If you need to consult with the student body before your application, like you do for the student engagement one, allow time for this, because student responses can be a little slow at times and need chasing if they're anything like our students. And just be aware that it needs to be signed off by your dean. And again, make sure that you've got time in their diary where they can do that and you're not panicking at the end trying to chase down the dean. And over to Harm.
Thank you very much. I'm now move on to practical tips how to do the actual writing, and this builds on the experience we have had here at the Charité. And what you see here is the section A, submitter information, and what you can see on the lower part there is the description of the criterion, and you see the criterion is relatively long and entails a lot of information, and then there is this endless white spot which you have to fill. And I will now give you an idea how we manage this. Next slide. First of all, if you look at the criterion, it is worth to do a thematic analysis. What themes are in this criterion, because it's very dense, it's very full. And what we did here, for example, we identified they are asking for key features of the school program. They are asking for the entry level, graduate or high school entry. Then they ask for the program length, the number of students enrolled, and the curriculum type. And please include an outline of your school's curriculum as appendix. These are the themes which are in the criterion. This to dismantle is the first step. Next slide. Okay, then you write your text as you always do, and here you see a model text. There's a lot of crazy words in between, but you see that's a faculty of this and the undergraduate program. And if we go to the next slide, I will show you what's really in there and why it's in there. Okay, in yellow you see highlighted, of course, the name of the faculty, then highlighted. This always refers to the themes you actually identified in the criterion. And you see here, there's the undergraduate program, the key features of the undergraduate program, the graduate school entry levels, the program length, number of students, the type of curriculum, and an overview is given in Appendix X. And when you read this, you see that it exactly includes all the themes which are in the criterion. And in addition, if you structure it this way and you use almost the same terms for these themes, then it makes it very much more easy for the reviewers to follow. So they have not to look for all the text, where is what. It is the main message is here, use the themes in the criteria to structure your text and make it visible, and thereby take your reviewers at the hand, and they have not to work very much. Next slide, please. Okay, next challenge is, what about the appendices? Here you see the text. Now I have included some appendices, and if we go to the next slide, I did also some coloring, and what you see on the first hand, it is a simple blue color, different from the black color of the text. It's therefore more easy to identify. It has a very easy numbering. It's consecutive, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in addition, it always has a little mark at the end, which is the main keyword, what's in the appendix. And if you look at the rhythm of the whole thing, whenever you do a statement, you should provide evidence in an appendix for this. And this is one way to structure your text and to include the appendices by numbering, and to make it easy visible for the reviewers. I now hand over to Sue, and next slide.
Thank you. So we've talked about the main application and how to refer to your appendices. What's actually going to go in the appendices themselves? Well, you're allowed to write a short introduction to each of your appendices, and that appendix should be that introduction should be brief but very informative. So when I come to it as a naive reader, I can look at it and know exactly what I'm looking for, because you may be showing me a whole web page with lots of information on. You may be showing me minutes of meetings that run to a dozen pages. Why is this appendix here? You've got to explain it to your readers. So the appendix should direct the introduction to the appendix should direct your reader to the key message. So we have a lovely example here. So if we look at this, we're told that this file demonstrates that half the elected members of a particular board are students, and I can find their names in yellow, so I can cross that. Very helpful. And I'm also being told how the students are appointed to the board, and I'm told how they're selected by the student body itself. So in that very short statement, that very short introduction, I have all the information that I need to take the message that you want me to take from this appendix, and that is that there's great student representation on this very significant board. So have the next slide, please. So the next thing to think about is that the number of appendices is actually limited. And so it's definitely in your interest if you choose examples that can give you evidence of more than one area. So in the previous example, we might have chosen a set of minutes from that board that perhaps gave us a great example of students initiating a change in curriculum or something like that. So make your appendices work for you. And if you can use them to evidence 2 or 3 different areas, so much the better. Remember that your evidence has got to actually demonstrate impact of things that you've done. It's very easy to say, we've just appointed 12 students to this board and it's all going to be great. But how do we know it's going to be great? How does the reviewer know that that's really going to have any impact? So what you need to do is do a little bit of history and think about, well, what have we done in the past? Where is the impact coming through? How can I demonstrate that change has happened, that I'm really demonstrating excellence in these particular areas? Thinking again about practicalities, you can hyperlink to web-based evidence in the main body of the text, which cuts down all the extra paperwork that you have to use, and that can be very helpful. Kate's already mentioned the example of using her school's web pages to showcase evidence, but you don't have to use your own school web pages. Think about different sorts of media you can use, and if you can mix it up, so much the better, because it helps to retain the interest and enthusiasm of your reviewer. So you might, for example, put links through to articles in academic journals if they're demonstrating their excellence and new developments in exciting areas. You might choose web pages for other institutions that are referring to things that you've been doing. You might even choose newspaper articles, for example, if your school has been doing things in the local community that have been highlighted in the local press. So really think about that evidence and think about how you're going to demonstrate the impact of whatever point it is you're trying to make. Have the next slide, please. So now we've thought about the overall introduction, we've thought about part C, which is the main body of your evidence, part B, which is the main body of evidence. We thought about the appendices that support that big body of text. And then we need to produce part C. So part C is a summary justifying why your institution is really deserving of this award. It's your opportunity to stress the strongest points of the application. And therefore it goes without saying that actually you have to have written that part before you can do that. But go through it try and go through it with a fresh eye and think about what's unique at your school, what is you're most proud of, what's the strongest evidence that you have. And even better, if you can invite someone who wasn't directly involved in gathering the evidence and not involved in the writing of part B, and are feeling a bit less jaded about the whole thing, because it is a long job and you do have to keep your energy levels up. If you can get someone to look at it with fresh eyes, they will be able to tell you what you can stress in part C and what they thought was really exciting about your application. And if you're really lucky, they might even write part C for you. But as we've mentioned before, and I think everybody has mentioned who's spoken, it takes time. So allow yourself plenty of time to do this section justice. And if you're getting someone else to do it, don't drop it on them on a Friday night and ask for it on Monday morning. Give them time to do it properly and they'll do a great job. So I think now I'm handing back to Kate.
Thanks, Sue. So a key part of your submission should be your glossary. We're obviously very international and all our universities and schools have different terminologies for different committees, boards, people. So any words that you think may not be understood by other institutions, please put them in a glossary. just so that we can be really clear exactly what you mean. So this is just an example of 3 different terms that may mean different things at different institutions, with just a brief description of what they all are. And again, it might be worth getting someone without much knowledge in this area to have a quick look through and just to highlight for you any terms that they don't understand, so that you can make sure you include them in your glossary. And the next one. So finally, before you submit your final version, read the application through as if you were a reviewer. And if you can't see the wood for the trees yourself, get somebody else to read it through as if they were the reviewer. They will undoubtedly pick up some stuff that doesn't make sense to them or isn't particularly clear, and you can just make those final tweaks that make your submission a really nice piece to read through. Double check that you've addressed every criterion. It's really important that you tick every box. So just run through again from the directions at the beginning and just double check that you have ticked all of those boxes. Check that your glossary is complete and there's no terms missing. And just look at the kind of style and quality of the writing. Does it flow well? Is it easy to read? Or does it sound like it's been put together by several different people and just doesn't flow through? Because again, we want to be kind to people that are reading our submissions and make it as easy for them as possible. And finally, just check that if you're using hyperlinks, that they all work. It's very frustrating when you click on a hyperlink and nothing happens, or it goes to a dead page. And particularly if you're using this as evidence, if your hyperlink doesn't work, you've lost one of your really, really valuable pieces of evidence. Because if you're anything like us, you'll find that you have too much evidence and you need to really carefully kind of select and cut down. And you don't want to lose a piece because the hyperlinks aren't working. And I think it's back to Kulsoom now.
Thank you, Kate and Sue and Harm. And so as promised, we've got through our bit in about the first half hour. I invite everybody to please put your questions in chat. There is one there that's asking about whether the letter of intent for the inspirational approaches, if the announcement of whether it's been approved is out yet or not. So we're unable to answer that. And that's very specific, obviously, to that particular application, and encourage you to please write. I think the best person to write to, if you could write to aspire@ame.org, they should be able to help you there because we don't have the answer to that. But we are here to answer any other questions that may come up. And please, again, go ahead and put things in chat. Harm, did you want to add something right now?
Yeah, I can add something. I can address the question about the letter of intent for the inspirational approaches. As far as I can follow the process, the decisions on full approval will go out this week. If you do not receive anything this week, then please go back to Sandy Cook and ask her. But the process is almost done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Harm. So if you have submitted your LOI and you haven't received an acknowledgement, and again, you don't hear anything, you may wish to again write back to the Aspire, whether you write directly to Sandy Cook or you write aspire@ame.org. Thank you for the appreciation. We are here to answer any other questions. So to answer the question about whether, there's a question in the chat about whether their letters of intent are for all categories. No, in fact, the inspirational, yes, the inspirational approaches one is the only one that to date requires a letter of intent to be submitted. The others are just a final submission that is due by the end of February of 2022. I can take this opportunity to remind everybody that they can reach out to the panel chairs if they wish to have conversations with them about their submission, perhaps any queries they may have about some of the criteria. That's something that the panel chairs could perhaps help you with. we'd like to think that we've done such a fantastic job that there are absolutely no questions, but again, we're here to answer any. The question is, how many awards are given in a year? It's actually a criterion reference, so whoever meets the criteria can get the award. There is no cutoff, and we've had varying numbers in varying years. There are some categories that are more well awarded than others, but there is no limit or cutoff to how many must be awarded in a year. We encourage all of you to, and we hope that these tips that we shared will help you to put together an application that's convincing and that you are then successful. There's a question about what are the benefits and advantages of getting the award. Sue, do you want to start by answering that? And then we'll actually see if we can get all of our panelists to answer.
I think the benefit is that you become part of a community of like-minded people that is genuinely global, and that gives you great perspective, I think, not only on what you're doing, but on what you could be doing. So I've found that personally very exciting. In terms of kind of benefits to your institution, well, you have a very nice physical award. I can see Harm's got one in the background there that we can see. There's one behind him down there. So you can display that somewhere prominently in your atrium, and people can see it, and then when they see it, they ask about it. When applicants come with their parents, they ask you what it's about. It's something for you to talk about. So it's something that can set you apart a little bit from other medical schools. So I think that the benefits are multiple. They can be both for the individuals and also for the institution. I'm sure you've got other comments and things to say as well.
Kate, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo everything that Sue said. But I think the other thing I'd say is you can use this as a driver to help develop your school as well. So we first looked at it a few years ago and decided that we weren't there, but just looking at the areas that you need to demonstrate excellence in, I think can really help you develop and move your school forwards by just focusing your mind on the things that can show excellence. So we kind of looked at it, left it, but had in the backs of our minds the kind of areas that we might like to develop. And I think that really helped move us forward. But yeah, completely agree. The international links and hearing what people do in schools from all over the world, I think is immensely valuable. And yeah, and for us as a school, as I said, we did it in the COVID year. It perhaps wasn't the best time to do it, but it boosted the morale of the school up so much with the fact that despite the hard times that we've been having and how hard everyone had been working, that we had achieved kind of recognition for what we did. And that really gave everyone a really big boost at the time. It's the award is fantastic when it comes in a big parcel and you unwrap it and you realize how heavy it is, and you can put it in your office. It's a really positive thing.
And I think I completely agree with everything that's been said, and to add that it as a reflective exercise, it's rewarding no matter what the outcome, and it's an important exercise to go through periodically. I would argue, even if you have received the award for excellence, to keep going back and make sure that you're maintaining excellence. Harm, did you want to add to that particular question? And then there's a whole bunch that are coming up that I'll address.
Yeah, the things are starting rolling. That's good. I can tell you, I'm now working here at the Charité, and the Charité has no problems to say that in Berlin, in Germany, has no problems to say we are excellent in patient care, we are excellent in research. And with getting this award in education, those people, researchers, clinicians said, wow, I did not know that we are excellent in international prize, in international recognition, that we are excellent in education. It has a major impact in these other groups at your institution, at the meta level.
So Kate, maybe you can take this, and again, others can add on. The question is that there appears there's a limit to the appendices, but is there a limit to how many items can be hyperlinked in the text?
So the hyperlink will be an appendix, so the two tie together closely, so you can't just put in a load of hyperlinks, because each of those just represents one piece of evidence that you need to put in your appendices table with your brief description, like it was described earlier. So you can't use that as a way around the number of appendices.
And there's two very similar questions. The announcement for the awards came, or at least the applications came just a few weeks ago. So the question that's being put is whether someone or an institution starting now, do we think they have a reasonable enough time to put together an application? And also how long it took all of us to put together our applications. Sue, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, no, I think now is actually a good time to start. I'm assuming that you're only going to put in a single application, because I know sometimes people put in dual ones, but we only put in one. And personally, I think I would only put in one at a time. I think you do have enough time if you start now. I wouldn't leave it any later, though, because as Kate has already mentioned, there are always sort of bits of evidence that you need to track down, and you know that some decision was made at a particular committee, but you can't remember which meeting. So you find yourself going through minutes of loads of stuff. It takes forever. We started in about November, and we actually got the application in pretty well on the last day. I think the closing date was the end of February, and it did take us all that time. I think if we'd started any earlier, we'd have probably kind of lost momentum and run out of steam. And I think if we'd started any later, we would have found it very, very difficult to finish in time, because realistically, most of the people involved in the application do actually have other jobs to do, and they're fitting this in around all their other activities. So I think now's about the right time.
Harm, I wonder if you can take a stab at this one. In the event that an institution is not awarded the Aspire to Excellence Award, is there feedback given for future direction and reapplication?
Yeah, you get a detailed feedback letter on the strengths and of the weaknesses of your application, and of course the weaknesses you can read. These are the areas where you can improve. And then, of course, if you can fix these problems, you can reapply.
This is an excellent question about what are the most repeated errors in an application, and what should be avoided? At the same time, what are the most recommended items in the application? Harm, if you want to start with that, and then we'll ask Sue and Kate to add on.
Difficult question. It is what I would like to point out. It is a little bit about the storyline. If you apply for students' engagement, then you should really think that students' engagement is all over the place in your application, and that you have strong students' engagement. Of course, you can think about student engagement. They are just learners, or they are participating. And if you have this concept, if you are applying for student engagement, it must be all over the place, and look for arguments why you are in this field strong. And the mistake can be that you start writing something, and always at the last sentence of a paragraph, or in paragraph number 3, the word students' engagement appears.
Yeah, if I can just sort of add something to that, I think that these are awards for excellence in a multitude of areas, and I think whatever area it is, that criteria, that they should be really embedded in the DNA of the institution. So if it's student engagement, students are already on all your committees. They're already sort of co-creating with you. They're already part of this. And I think if you find that you're scrabbling around to find the evidence or whatever award you're putting in for, it may mean that your institution isn't quite ready yet. I think we certainly found we had too much evidence and we had to try and cut it down. And most of the colleagues that I've spoken to who have been successful in getting awards have said the same thing. So I hope that's helpful.
Kate?
No, I just agree with what the others said, really. I agree with Sue that we had too much evidence and we had to cut it down. It was kind of falling out of our ears, really. And perhaps I think Sue's right, that probably is a good indicator that perhaps you have reached the right level once you've got that.
And I just want to add, I think it's important to provide context. The assumption that everybody, just like Kate was pointing out with when you give a glossary, so that your reviewers are on the same page. So the assumption that everybody appreciates your context or understands what various terms mean at your school, that's not a good one to take. So you want to make sure that you, as Harm had said, you really take reviewers by the hand and make sure they can understand, almost visualize where it is that you're situated, what you're doing, and take them through the narrative accordingly. Related to this, and something that Sue just mentioned, do you recommend some sort of self-study based on the criteria and finding the weaknesses and then working to fix them and then to apply for the award? Sue, and then maybe Harm.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I think when Kate was speaking during the presentation, she did, and you also mentioned, Kulsoom, the value of actually using the application form as a framework to really interrogate what you're currently doing and to ask yourself some hard questions. And also, I think you can use that framework as a bit of evidence. You know, if you find that you need to go to senior faculty in your institution or people who hold the purse strings and are kind of reluctant to untie them and give you anything for particular things you need to do, it gives you some evidence to say, look, if we can meet these criteria, we can get this award, and this is what internationally excellence should be looking like. So I think that using it as a way of examining what you're already doing is a really valuable thing to do.
Harm, would you like to add to that?
Of course. This is a very good question, and this is part of the goals of this Aspire Award. Of course, the short-term goals are to recognize those schools who already meeting these criteria. But the midterm and long-term goals is to bring more schools into the direction to meet the criteria, and thereby to foster the development of excellence in medical education.
There are some other questions. I'm just going to take the opportunity to answer them. Is there any award money? No, there's a fantastic trophy like the kind that Harm has in his background. There is, however, a submission fee. So that's required for processing the applications, but there is no award money. There is no validity to the award. We are delighted to welcome all members of all the award-winning schools to become members of the Aspire Academy. And for now, they continue to be, there's no end date, but that's why we, within the Academy, we put a strong emphasis on ensuring that we continue to maintain the excellence that we've already achieved through the networks and collaborations and that community of practice that is developed. So that's an important mission of the Aspire Academy. Harm, can anyone see best examples of past Aspire Awards?
Of course. If you go into the literature, there's part of the Aspire Academy that some schools they are summarizing their experiences and what excellence at their schools meet. mean, and therefore you can go on PubMed and you can look for Excellence in Medical Education Aspire Award. There are a few publications out there describing in detail what schools, what the road and the experience of these schools were. I think this is available for students' engagements, where we have a 12 tips. We have also some publications around the theme which are identified, but we have this for assessment. And these are good starting points.
Kate, how important do you think it is to adhere to the word limit, those pesky word limits in each criteria?
I think you should adhere to the word limit. I think it's as simple as that. If that's the criteria, follow the criteria.
Yeah, and I think that there is a little bit of an art to getting your point across succinctly. They can be problematic when you have a lot of information and are trying to trim it down. But in the end, they do make for the most succinct narrative for the reviewer to be able to synthesize as well. Anything over and above can also get difficult. Sue, would you want to add to that?
Well, yes, and I would agree with both of you, and also with the comment that someone saying put yourself in the place of the reviewer. You know, you've been asked to read a very substantial document anyway. If it's twice as long as it should be, you know, people are going to start losing patience with you and run out of steam and forget things. And you want to keep them happy, and so stick to the rules. They're there for everybody's benefit.
So Harm, I'll direct the next two questions again at you, and Sue and Kate, please feel free to add on. Can schools that are looking to submit now request someone to be a mentor from a school that has already received the award?
Yes, not request. They can approach people to help them with that. But please have in mind, they generally help just with the structuring and the reading and giving feedback. They will not share. They will not share their own application. This is something what all Aspire winning schools do. They do not share publicly their applications, but they, of course, they share experience and they provide feedback. And therefore you can approach those schools.
In fact, that's what prompted this event, where Harm, for example, has offered advice on that kind of structure, and we thought we would offer it then to the wider community. Harm, again, I wonder if you can answer this as well, that applications for the International Collaboration Award, can it be submitted without an approved LOI, the letter of intent? Would you know the answer to that?
I have to check. I'm not sure whether it needs an LOI. I can check this and come back in a second. In the meantime, yes. I can do a little tip about the word limit.
Please.
Of course, stick to the word limit. Otherwise, reviewers get nuts because it's a lot of work. But a trick you can do, you can turn some of your information into a figure and into a nice picture. This is nice to the eyes of the reviewer, and it saves you words, and it does not cost you any words in the word.
Or a table in which you can put things in bullet form rather than writing out full sentences. That's an excellent tip. Kate, where does one put the glossary section?
I would put it towards, I think there's arguments for putting it in different places, possibly. I was going to say I would put it at the beginning so that it's clear that there is a glossary before people enter the main body of the text. Yeah, I think I would put it before the main body of the text so that the reader knows it's there and they know where to refer back to. But I don't think that's written in tablets of stone.
No, I think we made ours Appendix 1 and referred to it right at the very beginning in Section A, where you have to describe your institution. So people knew it was there from the outset. But I agree with you. I think it needs to be there at the beginning.
Trevor Gibbs, thank you so much. And I think you confirmed exactly what Harm is looking up and what was my suspicion, that the letters of intent are actually only required for the Inspirational Approaches Award, and they're not really related to any other awards at the time being. So that includes the International Collaboration Award does not have a letter of intent, and therefore you're welcome to just apply and submit the full application by the deadline. In response to the question of who are going to be the reviewers, you're welcome to go on the Aspire webpage, and you'll notice that not only the panel chairs, but the panels who are the reviewers are provided for. So this is from an international community of practitioners who themselves have evidenced excellence or experience within the field. So as has just been put into chat, you're welcome to go in and check out the website and see who the reviewers might be. Coming back to the question so that we can just be very clear, so you meant that the glossary section is to be put under the appendices, but mention it at the beginning of the application.
Yes, exactly. So we made our glossary appendix number 1.
So it doesn't chew up the word limit, but it is there front and center as one of the first pieces that a reviewer can look at, open up, and then refer to as they move forward.
Yes, because I think the very first section you have to describe your institution, don't you, in section A, and how many students it has and that sort of thing. And we put it in there that you could find information about the committee structure, glossary of terms, who'd been involved in the application, all those sort of things went into our first appendix.
Wonderful. I think that has clarified all the questions till now. We still have a few minutes, so if there continue to be questions, we're happy to take them. The question is, where can I find the application form for the simulation category? It appears to be missing on the site. Diana, can we have a look at that? Maybe the hyperlink isn't working. As far as I knew, all of the applications were up under each category. So we'll quickly check that while we are on here. And again, while we're checking that, and if we're unable to answer, please do feel free to write to aspire@ame.org. The folks are extremely helpful and happy to answer any questions. Okay, so we submitted a letter of intent for faculty development, but since it was not needed, will we still receive a response, or should I just write in? I want to say that I think when it's not required and a letter of intent is not required, you're welcome to just go ahead and submit the full application. Again, that is only for the one award category of inspirational approaches. So if you wish to reach out to the panel chairs and speak to them and get a little bit of a sense for where your school might be at, you can do that. And again, the names of the panel chairs are there, but the letters of intent are only required for the inspirational approaches. If there continue to be any questions, again, we're here. And I'm reading as I go along that Diana's been looking at the links and checking all the forms. So again, we'll check on the simulation one for you. And if you find that you still have trouble accessing it from this link, please do go ahead and write to aspire@ame.org or reach out to the panel chair as well for simulation. Well, we're delighted that this has been helpful and you found it useful and informative. As I mentioned, it was really driven by providing this kind of advice to others, and we thought we could do it through a formal platform. We really wish all of you the very best. It may be a long process, but it is, as been mentioned, a rewarding process, no matter what the outcome. And we hope that you will find not just the session, but the writing of an Aspire Award application just as rewarding as we're promising. Thank you all. Again, we're here to answer any questions till the end of the hour. But if there are no more, I think the recording may also be available, and we look forward to the feedback that you may give us.
And can we just thank Diana for running the session for us, and thanks to you.
Profusely. We may thank her profusely.
And thanks to you for looking after all the slides and keeping us to time and keeping it narrow.
Actually, you stole my thunder, Sue. I actually wanted to thank you, Harm and Kate, for those fantastic tips that you put together. I mean, it seems so simple, but I think it takes away a little bit of the anxiety of getting started with the process, and knowing that you're not alone, that others have experienced this, that others have navigated this process before and done it successfully. Absolutely fantastic tips that all of you shared, and I'm so glad to see that everybody found them useful. So thank you, and I think as there appears to be no more questions, we can start signing off, although I promise that as facilitators, even if our cameras are off, we will stay on for the next 4 minutes until the end of the hour, and we're happy to take any last minute questions that may pop up. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for joining us. And we wish you all the very best, and we wish you success.
All the best from Berlin.
Yeah, thank you. Don't be put off. It's very daunting, but do it anyway.
Definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Oh, there is a question that snuck in. If a programmatic effort is not on an official part of the curriculum, can we apply? I'm trying to decipher that question. And Annette, if you could perhaps elaborate. Do you mean if there are extracurricular activities, but it's a programmatic effort, and I'm wondering which award that you're referring to? Again, if you're able to clarify that a little bit, maybe we'll try to take a stab at answering this question. Or perhaps an example might help. Okay, so an extracurricular activity, and if it's not an official part of the curriculum, can we apply for which award are you thinking of? Sorry, we're doing this piecemeal.
If I may answer this, if it's an extracurricular activity, since most, if not almost all Aspire Awards are related to the real curriculum, to the curriculum, then the one way you can think of is inspirational approaches. If this is something really inspirational, it has some magnitude, then this would be an area where you in the next year could send this letter of intent, and then they will decide, the panelists will decide whether this is sufficient for full approval, and that's what I'd suggest.
How about international collaboration? So programmatic effort that is an international collaboration, but is not necessarily a curricular activity.
That could be something.
Yeah, and again, because an LOI is not required, that may be something that you may wish to reach out directly to the panel chair and see if they may help you answer that question better than we can. Also because we promised that we wouldn't get into content and try to limit ourselves to just those very practical tips for writing and evidencing an award. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It is now the top of the hour, so it's a pleasure. Thank you to all my co-presenters and co-facilitators, again to Amy and Diana for putting all of this together and helping us. And finally, to all the participants for being here, asking such fantastic questions. And again, we end with wishing you all the best and every success, and stay strong and stay resilient and just keep pushing through. Final tip. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.